Hello, True Health Seeker, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Learn True Health podcast. I'm so excited you're here. Today is our interview with Dr. Gundry. He wrote the book, The Plant Paradox, and I have to say it was quite controversial. I know you're going to love today's interview. Dr. Gundry talks about removing anti-nutrients from your diet, and if you, as you listen, want to learn how to do that, come join the Learn True Health Home Kitchen. Go to learntruehealth.com/home kitchen. I've been filming for several months. There's many videos in there, and I teach you how to remove these anti-nutrients from your diet, the oxalates, the lectin, the gluten, and how to eat a whole foods diet filled with nutrient-dense foods that heal the gut, prevent heart disease, reverse disease, nutrify the body. So go to learntruehealth.com/home kitchen and sign up and start cooking food that heals the body. Awesome. Thank you so much for being a listener. Thank you so much for sharing this podcast with those you love. Enjoy today's interview. Welcome to the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James. This is episode 431. I am so excited for today's guest. This is going to be such an interesting interview. Dr. Stephen Gundry, your book is The Plant Paradox, and from everything I've seen, people either love it or hate it. There's no in between. I've not met someone who's lukewarm about your book. People are either passionate about what you do, passionately for what you do, or passionately against what you do. So I think it's going to be fun to have you on the show today and share what happened for you to discover and create the plant paradox and how your system is helping people reverse disease and heal their body. Welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I have interviewed several doctors that are whole food plant-based doctors that reverse disease with plants. And they are up in arms about what you do. They say it's just ridiculous that someone would cut out legumes and beans and plants that contain lectins, and they think that these are very healthy foods. I'd love for you to start by sharing. Obviously, there's so much controversy around that, especially with doctors who claim that the opposite of what your diet is healthy. How do you handle that kind of criticism?
Well, I guess I just show them the data, the data that I show in my book and have subsequently published. There's actually no getting around the fact that the harm of lectins have been known about for actually well over 100 years. In fact, there's, just to use an example, there's 3 papers in the literature in monkeys showing that the lectin in peanut oil is a major cause of hardening of the arteries of coronary artery disease in monkeys. And when you remove that lectin from peanut oil and give it to monkeys, they don't get coronary artery disease. Recently, I published a paper in Circulation showing that lectins are a major cause of an autoimmune attack on the inside of blood vessels, and that when you remove lectins from humans' diets, that they're markers for autoimmune attack on their blood vessels minimizes. So it's, we can say I'm, telling people falsehoods, but in fact, this is all published data that I write about.
How does one go about removing lectins from their diet?
Well, that's actually pretty easy. Actually, recently I had on my podcast Dr. Joel Fuhrman, who actually I'm a big fan of. And a few years ago when the Plant Paradox came out, I believe he was pretty vocal that, how dare I take beans away from people? I don't take beans away from people. I merely ask them to destroy the lectins with a pressure cooker. And while I had him on the podcast and we were chatting, it turns out that he actually pressure cooks his beans. He does not eat his beans unpressure cooked. And so sometimes the noise gets in the way. What's important? Last week I had beans 3 times last week, and believe me, they were pressure cooked. So I have nothing against beans, but we have to know our enemy, and we have to know how the plant decided to protect itself. And the good news is, for the most part, you can neutralize the enemy by some simple tricks.
You brought up a really good point. The plant protects itself. Explain what lectins are and like how does the plant create it, and then how does our body react to lectin?
Yeah, so lectins actually were discovered over 100, almost 150 years ago now. We use lectins to blood type, and there was a very famous lectin diet. It was kind of well hidden, called the blood type diet. And so lectins are used by plants as a defense mechanism, one of the defense mechanisms against being eaten and of having their babies, their seeds, from being eaten. And lectins are proteins. They're what are called sticky proteins because they actually look for sugar molecules to stick to, specific sugar molecules. And those sugar molecules line the inside of our gut. They line the inside of our blood vessels. They line the inside of our joints. They line the space between our nerves. And the theory is if lectins can break through the wall of the gut, and they're very good at this. Dr. Fasano from Johns Hopkins a few years ago proved that gluten, which is a lectin, causes leaky gut by binding to the sugar molecules in the gut and breaking the tight junctions. And so there's no question that this happens. Why do they do that? Because, quite frankly, if you can cause an animal to not feel well, to not thrive, then a smart animal says, every time I eat these particular plants or these plant babies, I don't do very well, and I think I'll go eat something else. The animal wins, the plant wins, and everybody's happy. And then humans arrive. And as most of us know, we're not very smart. And so when we eat something that bothers us, let me give you an example. Heartburn is caused by lectins. And so instead of avoiding lectin-containing foods, like, for instance, a hot pepper, which is loaded with lectins, we instead take Prilosec or Nexium, and we keep eating these things. And that's really dumb because actually there's a beautiful paper in Humans that shows that in normal human beings who were asked to take one of these proton pump inhibitors for 1 week only, they had dramatic changes in their ability to remember things, process. 1 week. So I can't believe Larry the Cable Guy thinks that not being very smart is worth a corn dog.
How do lectins cause heartburn?
So lectins actually break down the mucus lining. That mucus is a mucopolysaccharide, a sugar molecule, and exposes the covering of our esophagus. So the mucus is used up by a lectin attack, and then the acid irritates it. I used to have horrible heartburn. I used to eat Tums left, right, and every day, and I haven't had heartburn in 20 years now.
Amazing. Tell us a little bit about your story. I mean, your background is so extensive. Reading your biography, it's amazing what you've accomplished through the years and the what you have given to the medical space, that you have helped so many children and so many cardiac patients around the world. But you yourself had health issues, and you uncovered this particular way of eating to heal yourself. Tell us a bit about your personal journey with recovering your health.
Well, I was a very famous heart surgeon, children's heart surgeon, transplant surgeon, uh, very famous for inventing devices to protect the heart during heart surgery. And but I was 70 pounds overweight despite running 30 miles a week, going to the gym 1 hour a day, and eating a healthy, low-fat, primarily vegetarian diet. And I had high cholesterol, pre-diabetes, arthritis. I used to operate with migraine headaches, doing baby heart transplants. I don't recommend it, um, but somebody had to do it. So, and I thought this was normal. Actually, I was assured it was normal because my father was very much the same way. And it wasn't until I met a fellow I describe in my books by the name of Big Ed from Miami, Florida, who, in 6 months' time, following a diet very much like what I describe and taking a bunch of supplements from a health food store, he cleaned out 50% of the blockages in his coronary arteries in 6 months' time. And he had inoperable coronary artery disease. And I was totally shocked that that could happen. I was taught, as most doctors are taught, that coronary artery disease is progressive. Yes, we could maybe slow it down, but eventually it's going to get you. And to watch an individual, and now many individuals, reverse coronary artery disease with food and supplements changed my life. Now, I was ready to discover this. Believe it or not, as an undergraduate at Yale, I had a special major in human evolutionary biology, basically epigenomics. And I had a big thesis that my parents had. I'm actually staring at it in my bookcase right now. And I actually put myself on my thesis, and I lost 50 pounds my first year, another 20, and have kept it off for over 20 years now. So I started treating patients that I operated on with my program to try and keep them from visiting me again. And lo and behold, not only did they not visit me again, but their diabetes went away, their arthritis went away, their high blood pressure went away, their autoimmune diseases went away. And that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years.
I love it. So lectins, are they proteins?
Yes,
What?
they're protein.
They're proteins. I mean, everyone's heard of gluten at this point. I've been gluten-free
Yep.
since 2011. And so many people have heard that lectins or gluten can cause leaky gut. There's also this new thing that we're hearing about called leaky brain. Have you heard of this?
Have I heard it? What do you mean? I've been studying and writing about it.
Oh, tell us more about leaky brain.
Yeah, so it turns out there is a incredible gut-brain connection that is being elucidated actually with every passing day. And I wrote quite a bit about it in The Longevity Paradox, but my next book, which is entitled The Energy Paradox, gets even more into that. And what we found, we now have some pretty nice sophisticated tests that look at breakdown of the blood-brain barrier. And the blood-brain barrier is basically a barrier that keeps everything out of the brain. For instance, we can't, if you had a brain tumor, a malignant brain tumor, we can't give you chemotherapy by swallowing it or through your veins, because the chemotherapy won't get past the blood-brain barrier. We actually have to inject chemotherapy into your spinal fluid. So that's how impenetrable the blood-brain barrier is. In people with leaky gut, a great number of people actually have a breakdown of that blood-brain barrier. And there's more and more and more evidence that conditions like Parkinson's, like Alzheimer's, like plain old everyday dementia is in large part coming from leaky gut and causing leaky brain. And you don't have to look very far to realize we have an epidemic of dementia, and we have an epidemic of leaky gut. In fact, this certainly was known for a very long time. Hippocrates, 2,500 years ago, the father of medicine, said all disease begins in the gut. And he didn't have the Human Microbiome Project. He didn't, but he knew this. And the fascinating thing, he was absolutely right. And all disease does begin in the gut. And the good news is all disease can be reversed by reversing leaky gut.
So how do we heal the barrier for our brain? How do we heal leaky brain? By focusing on the gut?
Correct. Yeah, leaky brain comes from leaky gut, not the other way around.
Got it. And how do we heal the gut? Is it as simple as removing lectins from our diet?
Well, it's not as simple as that, but for instance, I just gave a paper at the American Heart Association Lifestyle and Epidemiology meeting in March, where we looked at people who were gluten intolerant, who did react to gluten. And these people were gluten-free, and yet they still had leaky gut. And we found that 70% of people who are gluten sensitive also react to corn vigorously. Mm-hmm. And sadly, most gluten-free products have corn in them. We also found that in this report, taking away other major lectin-containing foods like brown rice, like peas, for instance, like legumes, like the nightshade family, tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, potatoes, then and only then did these people stop their leaky gut. So it was not only just being gluten-free, it was actually being lectin-free. In fact, as I wrote about in the Plant Paradox, you can take people with celiac disease, which is the extreme form of gluten intolerance, and you can put them on a gluten-free diet for a year and a half, and 70% of those people on a gluten-free diet will still have celiac disease by biopsy, which is the gold standard, even though they're on a gluten-free diet. And my premise is it's because most of the gluten-free foods that they're eating have lectins other than gluten. And this is what I just showed in that paper I gave in March.
So many people who are gluten-free don't avoid oats, and oats contain gliadin, which is such a similar protein. I always tell people to try to avoid oats, and then try to avoid them for like a month. Avoid them for a month, and then add them back and see what happens. Very quickly, people notice a difference once they've been abstinent from it.
Yeah, there's no such thing as gluten-free oats because you're right. There's a cross-reactivity of those proteins. And as my daughter, who's a horsewoman, always reminds me, the only purpose of oats is to fatten a horse for winter.
Wow, that's interesting. It reminds me of looking into the idea of eating chicken. People who want to bulk up at the gym are told to eat chicken. People who want to lose weight are told to eat chicken. And that's paradoxical in and of itself. It's like, wait a second. So one person wants to bulk up and they're told, eat a bunch of chicken, like the bodybuilders. And then people who are on, Weight Watchers and stuff are told to just eat chicken. It'll help you lose weight, but it doesn't. And that's a paradox. There are foods that, people think are really healthy, but they have to look deeper like you do. Now, what about resistant starch? So many of these foods you've mentioned, which contain lectins, are also full of resistant starch, which helps to feed the good gut bacteria. This is the paradox. It's something that could help us, but also is harming us at the same time.
Well, I mean, the good news with most of these resistant starches is that you can destroy lectins with a pressure cooker. The only lectin that has not been capable of being destroyed is gluten. You can pressure cook gluten for an hour, 2 hours, and it will not break. All the other lectins in general will break. Oats is also a problem. We've had a number of people try it and it won't work. But there are two grains that don't have lectins because they don't have hulls, and that's sorghum and millet. And I have a lot of sorghum and millet recipes. The other great news is that the best resistant starches are tubers like sweet potatoes or taro root or yucca or green bananas. And they're fantastic sources of resistant starches, and they don't have any lectins in them.
Now, I noticed that you didn't mention any nightshades. What are nightshades and why are they so bad for us?
Well, so two reasons. The nightshade family that we think of have pretty impressive lectins in their peel and their seeds. The flesh doesn't. And traditional cultures have always peeled and de-seeded tomatoes or peppers before they eat them. So the nightshade family came from America, and believe it or not, even goji berries are nightshades. And they actually came from America and they were taken to China in trade. They were called wolfberries in America. So even goji berries are pretty nasty little lectin sources. If you go over to Italy and talk to chefs, which I do all the time, they will tell you that you cannot make tomato sauce without peeling and de-seeding your tomatoes. If you go talk to the Southwest American Indians, you know that you have to peel and de-seed peppers before you eat them or grind them into chili powder. And in fact, what's really hilarious is those chili pepper flakes and seeds that we put on our pizzas were actually the byproduct of making peppers safe to
Oh
eat.
my gosh.
Oh, yeah, that's why they exist, because they were thrown away.
That's so funny. What about peeling a potato, just a regular, like Yukon potato? Would that make it safe?
Yeah, but there has recently been discovered a new class of lectins, which are called aquaporins. And there is an aquaporin in potatoes, there is an aquaporin in green bell peppers, there's an aquaporin, believe it or not, in spinach. And I have, sad to say, a number of particularly women who have autoimmune diseases and leaky gut, who we've been befuddled as to why they get better, but not all the way. And these women, for the most part, react to the aquaporin lectin in spinach. And when we take their spinach away, and they're usually big spinach eaters, they finally get better. Now, why haven't I had a podcast on that? Because I don't want to have a mass panic. Most people don't react to the aquaporin in spinach, but those that do, it's pretty impressive.
It's kind of like if you've tried everything and it's not working, try this one thing, but
Correct.
not everyone. Now, does aquaporin become destroyed by pressure cooking it?
Probably. Nobody's actually done the experiment, but I do have people that eat potatoes, and I do ask them to pressure cook it, and so far, so good.
How, because they're discovering new lectins, what can we do to stay on top of this information? Is your book updated? Like, does your book have the aquaporin information in it, or should they follow your podcast? What's the best way to make sure we stay on top of this information?
Yeah, so my podcasts actually cover these subjects. For instance, there was between my Plant Paradox book and the Plant Paradox cookbook, it was discovered that pecans have a lectin that in some people, it actually causes an autoimmune attack on the pancreas. So we put that into the Plant Paradox cookbook that probably pecans are not your best nut to eat, particularly if you have an autoimmune disease or if there's any question of diabetes.
Are
Interesting.
there any nuts or seeds that are safe?
Oh, yeah. So, for instance, walnuts are quite safe. Pistachios are safe. Macadamia nuts are safe. For the most part, hazelnuts are safe. Brazil nuts are safe. You notice I'm not mentioning almonds. There is a lectin in the peel of almonds that a number of my patients with rheumatoid arthritis react to. And that's why we recommend either blanched almond flour and or Marcona almonds, the peeled almonds. And again, it's very interesting that there are a number of cultures, particularly Spain and Portugal, where the mothers teach the daughters how to soak and peel almonds before they're eaten. And again, you start looking at cultures and say, why do they do this? Because it's kind of a lot of work. Why not just eat the skin?
When I was 6 years old, my mom took me to a naturopath, and they put us on he put us on a specific diet, and it turned out that naturopath was Dr. Diadamo. So I grew up on the O blood type diet, and it changed my life. I was very sick. I was just sick all the time, and my mom was sick too. And he had a practice in Toronto. Overnight, my life changed. It was phenomenal. My health just completely. One day I was sick, the next day I was healthy. I mean, that's how quick it was shifting my diet to the O blood type diet. And then, of course, when I was 13, I got incredibly rebellious and started eating everything that wasn't, everything my mom didn't want me to eat. And I got to develop sickness again. And then through my 20s, I was very sick. And in my late 20s and through my 30s, I spent trying to get my health back and reversing all the diseases I gave myself by eating the wrong foods. So I've lived this several times. Eat the wrong foods, get sick. Eat the right foods, get healthy. But it can be, the waters can be muddy for many of us, especially those with autoimmune, because like you said, some people react to this, but not to this. Some people react to this, but not to this. And where do we start? Should one do an elimination diet? What's a good place to start? Because not everyone reacts to all the lectins like you mentioned.
Yeah, well, so I've published a paper of 102 people with biomarker-proven autoimmune diseases, whether they're lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, MS, who were put on my program for 6 months. At the end of 6 months, 95 out of 102, or 94%, were biomarker negative and off of all immunosuppressant drugs. So that's not a bad result. What my first principle of the plant paradox is, it's not what I tell you to eat that matters. It's what I tell you not to eat. And it really is. And that's an elimination diet. Interestingly enough, the carnivore folks have taken my recommendations to the extreme. And since all plants are out to get us one way or another, that total elimination of plants is a rather impressive elimination diet. I happen to think that they're going to be sadly mistaken, because there are some really great things, particularly the soluble fibers in plants, that our gut microbiome is dependent on. And as people found in the longevity paradox, and they're going to learn more in the energy paradox, we are absolutely positively dependent on messages and transmitters that our gut microbiome makes, that keeps our mitochondria working properly, that keeps our brain working properly. So it's taking away the known causes of leaky gut, and that includes more than just changing the type of plants you eat. It's primarily trying to eliminate, for the most part, antibiotic overuse, which is rampant, not only in us, but in the animals that we eat. Eliminating the non-steroidal anti-inflammatories like ibuprofen, for instance, like naproxen. One ibuprofen is literally like swallowing a hand grenade. Eliminating the antacid drugs like the proton pump inhibitors, like we mentioned earlier. They totally change the bacterial flora. Eliminating artificial sweeteners like Splenda, just as an example, completely changes your gut bacteria. And something that many of us are passionate about, trying to get glyphosate, Roundup, out of our lives. It's probably not doable, but glyphosate is a major disruptor by itself of our gut wall. Really good at causing leaky gut.
You said that ibuprofen is like swallowing a grenade. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so long ago, and I could give you an hour lecture, long ago, the original non-steroidal anti-inflammatory was aspirin, and aspirin was used extensively in arthritis and rheumatoid arthritis, and of course, people know that it caused stomach bleeding, and so a class of drugs in the same family were developed that wouldn't cause stomach bleeding, but the drug companies knew that the bleeding would actually be caused in the small intestine. And you couldn't see down into the small intestine with gastroscopes, so you would never know it was there. But believe it or not, when these drugs came out, they were prescription only. Things like Motrin was a prescription. Things like naproxen was a prescription. And there was an FDA black box warning that you could only use these for 2 weeks at a time because they were so dangerous. Well, now, of course, they are the largest over-the-counter drug there is. And there's children's Advil, for instance. But what these do, and this is documented, Google it sometimes, great fun, these are drug company research that shows that these destroy the lining of the small intestine, causing leaky gut. And I can't tell you the number of people that I see, young women and men who are athletes, who suffered an injury and were put on high-dose non-steroidal anti-inflammatories by very well-meaning orthopedic surgeons, and they, in turn, developed autoimmune diseases. And I write about some of them in my books. And when we stopped these medications and sealed their gut, lo and behold, their autoimmune disease went away.
How quickly can one recover their gut? How quickly does it take to seal the gut once they've eliminated the foods that have been
Great question.
causing holes in it?
Great question. We've seen it turn around as early as 3 months. One of my more troublesome patients with multiple autoimmune diseases all her life took about 9 months. But there's other things that are part and parcel with healing the gut. The vast majority of people have very low vitamin D levels. And as I write about in the longevity paradox, vitamin D is essential to tell stem cells that help repopulate the gut to grow and divide. And without vitamin D, they just kind of sit there and twiddle their thumbs. So the vast majority of people I see with autoimmune disease and or leaky gut have very low vitamin Ds when I see them. I'll give you an example of a woman I just saw today from Southern California. She's in her 40s. She developed ulcerative colitis 5 years ago, out of the blue. We think we know why, but She was put on a immunosuppressant and then came to see us a year ago. She was positive for anti-nuclear antibody, which is an autoimmune disease marker that most people associate with lupus, very positive for it. And she had a very low vitamin D. So we've now been seeing her for a year. She stopped her immunosuppressant a year ago. She's had no episodes of ulcerative colitis since. She is negative for anti-nuclear antibody and has been actually since we started the program. And she's pretty happy camper. So
I love it. The idea for those suffering from autoimmune that they can completely go into remission is, I mean, that's a dream come true. There's so many people suffering, and they're told by the average doctor that they're going to be on medication for the rest of their life, and they'll, this is their new norm. It's so frustrating that so many doctors are still in this old way of thinking that once you're in a disease state, you're going to always be in the disease state, and they don't look to nurturing the body through food and shifting diet and lifestyle to heal the body. So you must be really waking a lot of doctors up, showing them that there's a way to heal. You've obviously published so many articles on helping people to reverse autoimmune. Are you starting to see that doctors are listening and prescribing your diet?
well, I think that there's, particularly in functional medicine, I don't do functional medicine. I do what I call restorative medicine. I'm not quite sure what functional medicine means, but most, I have good friends like Mark Hyman and Jeffrey Bland in functional medicine, and that's fine. But I think there's more and more people interested in the fact that Hippocrates was right, that all disease comes from the gut, and that we really ought to be looking at the gut as where we need to do our work. I mean, somebody tell Kelly Clarkson that you can't reverse Hashimoto's thyroiditis. I mean, Kelly found my book. She had Hashimoto's thyroiditis. She was on thyroid medication. And now she doesn't have Hashimoto's thyroiditis, and she's off of medication. But her doctors told her, hey, you're going to be on, thyroid the rest of your life.
I love it. I love hearing stories of success of people being able to reverse diseases and get off of medications.
I'll tell you another funny Hashimoto story. Usually we're so busy that the first visit in our office, they see my PA, and then the next visit they see me. And that's usually 3 months or 6 months after the first visit, depending on the severity. And so I'm seeing a woman in her actually late 50s for the first time after she had seen my PA. And, I say, why'd you come here, blah, blah, blah. And she said, well, I have Hashimoto's thyroiditis. I said, oh, is that a fact? She said, yes, I've had it all my life. And I had seen her new results. And when we first saw her, she, in fact, did have both markers for anti-thyroid antibodies and had Hashimoto's. Well, this time they were negative. And I said, well, that's interesting you should say that because you don't have Hashimoto's. And she said, well, what kind of quack are you? Of course I have Hashimoto's. And that's why I'm here. I said, well, yeah, you used to have Hashimoto's, but you don't now. And, I flip her labs open. She said, oh, my gosh, it is true. You can get rid of it. I said, yeah, look at that. So
I love it. And once her antibodies go down, do the hormones restore themselves? I know of some people who have completely eliminated the antibodies are virtually non-existent on their labs, but their thyroid is still not functioning optimally. Are the lectins causing harm still to their thyroid levels?
A lot of times people who've had it for a long time, their their immune system has destroyed their thyroid gland, just like, for
Mm.
instance, in type 1 diabetes, the immune system destroys the pancreas, the beta cells in the pancreas. But having said that, we always, once we get these antibodies turned off, start weaning off thyroid medication. We actually just started this weekend with a woman from San Francisco, a fairly young woman, who we now have negative for antithyroid antibodies, and we're starting to wean her thyroid, and we'll see. I mean, the good news about thyroid medication is that you can take both, T4 and T3 and do a good job of, replacing what the thyroid does. But that doesn't mean we should actively allow Hashimoto's thyroiditis to continue. Because one of the things that got me interested in this in the first place is that this autoimmune attack takes many forms, and you can have multiple autoimmune diseases at the same time. Recently, there's increasing evidence that Parkinson's disease is actually an autoimmune disease, which to me makes a great deal of sense, since I and others are convinced that Parkinson's disease comes from the gut, not from the brain.
Fascinating. I have heard there's a relationship between MS and Parkinson's, and MS is autoimmune. So that doesn't surprise me. Have you seen someone reverse Parkinson's through healing their gut?
Well, we've seen it stop. My father had Parkinson's for 20 years without changing his medication at all. And if you know anything about Parkinson's, that's impossible. But we got to him early, and My mother was a very good person about denying him the foods that he loved. And he made it to 91, and then actually kind of died suddenly of a bladder infection. But yeah, so getting to 91, 20 years with Parkinson's, pretty doggone good run.
Very cool. We've talked about gluten and lectins. Are phytates or phytic acid, I know they're anti-nutrients. Are they also lectins?
No, no. Again, the plant has lots of tools to prevent itself from being eaten, or to warn the predator that you really don't want to eat me, or try to make the predator not thrive. And phytates are, one of these methods. Now, I actually think and agree with some of my vegan colleagues that there's a lot to like about phytates. But this is all part of the anti-nutrient system. One of the things that we have to realize, for instance, since lectins are proteins, rats and rodents are primarily grain predators. And rats and rodents have 10 times the amount of proteases, that is, enzymes that break down proteins, than we have. And so, they're very well equipped to, go after these lectin proteins in the food that they want, that they eat. So when people point out, well, you look at these great rat and mice experiments where whole grains are, really good for them. Well, that's great. They have a great protease system that breaks down these proteins. We don't.
So are you suggesting that we shouldn't get our protein primarily from plants?
Oh, no. Are you kidding? I am a plant predator. I I actually think that I tell my patients that we should actually be gorillas who live in Italy. And by that I mean we should be eating huge amounts of leaves and pouring olive oil on them.
Very interesting. Why consume olive oil?
Oh, great question. So, as I wrote in the longevity paradox, there's three groups of people who live in blue zones, and blue zones are those areas of the world that Dan Buckner, the journalist, described as having incredible longevity. And I'm actually the only nutritionist who has ever spent most of his career living in a blue zone, and that was Loma Linda, California, where I was a professor. And so when people talk to me about blue zones and say, I don't know anything about blue zone, I said, well, I guess I didn't live in one for most of my life. Anyhow, 3 blue zones use a liter of olive oil per week. That's about 10 to 12 tablespoons a day. And there are some fascinating head-to-head studies done in Spain called the Predimed study, making 65-year-old people use a liter of olive oil per week versus a low-fat Mediterranean diet. And lo and behold, at the end of 5 years, the people who used the olive oil had actually gained memory compared to when they were age 65, while the low-fat group lost memory. The people in the olive oil group had reversal of heart disease, whereas the low-fat diet group increased their heart disease, and we could go on and on.
Could we gain the same benefit from eating olives instead of drinking or consuming olive oil?
Yeah, and I actually ask people to do both. I actually have a product that I sell that is the combination of an incredibly high polyphenol rich olive oil, olive leaves, and olives that are pressed into little pearls that look like caviar. And they're called polyphenol olive oil pearls. So, yeah, so it turns out, interesting fun fact, there are far more polyphenols in the leaves of fruiting plants than there are in the fruit. For instance, there are far more apple polyphenols in apple leaves than in apples. There are far more polyphenols in black raspberry leaves than there are in black raspberries, and so on.
Well, it's nettle season right now, so we can go out in nature and harvest nettles, which are the leaves that are rich in polyphenols. And I learned recently that if you grow sweet potatoes or yams, you can harvest some of the leaves and eat them much like spinach.
Correct.
And that is such a delicious thing to grow in your own backyard. I know a lot of people are looking into growing their own food, given that they're all at home and want a new hobby and that they'd like to have some sustainability and have some healthy food. What I know you tell us what not to eat. What are some of your go-to foods to eat that are very supportive of our gut and very healthy overall?
Great question. So avocados are a great choice to start with, but they're the family of chicories, radicchio, chicory, Belgian endive, curly endive, are some of the best foods you can possibly eat to help your gut bugs. Jerusalem artichokes and artichoke hearts are just loaded with a type of sugar molecule that we can't digest called inulin, but our gut buddies think is the best food that they could possibly eat. So that, along with the cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, arugula, bok choy, Swiss chard, all of these actually have some pretty fascinating compounds that actually tell the immune system in your gut to calm down and relax a little bit. And they're called the R receptors, AHR, if anybody wants to look them up. So but pour olive oil on them, please.
Interesting. Yeah, I think the olive oil thing is it's so controversial depending on who you talk to. There's a handful of doctors that say that we shouldn't consume any oil, that any oil, no matter what kind of oil, even if it's cold pressed virgin olive oil or raw cold pressed coconut oil, or all the kind you could buy in the supermarket, that they're all bad for you and that they cause damage to the endothelial lining of the cardiovascular system, and that once oil is exposed to oxygen, it creates free radicals, so you're actually absorbing free radicals into the body. What do you say to that? Is the benefits of the olive oil outweigh those negatives?
Well, all I say is, why don't you look at the actual human controlled trials where that has been tested? And the results are exactly the opposite. One of the most famous trials was the Lionheart trial, Leonhardt, where they looked at a diet that was supplemented with alpha linoleic acid oil from purslane and compared that to the low-fat American Heart Diet. And it was a 5-year study. It was randomized. They stopped the study at 3 years because the group given the Mediterranean diet with the alpha-linoleic acid oil, and large amounts of it, did so much better in new episodes of MIs and unstable angina that it was not fit to continue the trial. Anybody can look it up, the Leonhardt diet, and anybody can look up the Predimed trial and see a head-to-head of high oil versus no oil or low oil. And the results always come out that it wins. The olive oil wins, the alpha-linoleic acid wins. So people who say, oh, this becomes rancid, yeah, olive oil can come rancid. That's why you want to buy it from a high volume source and you want to use it quickly. Interestingly, olive oil is the least capable of oxidizing of any oil. It even beats coconut oil as not being oxidized with cooking. We've had two of the world's oil experts on my podcast, and they both confirm that olive oil is the safest cooking oil. Now, people say, well, no, it smokes, and that means it's oxidizing. That's not true at all. It has a low smoke point, but smoke has nothing to do with oxidation. People have been cooking with olive oil for over 5,000 years, and the results speak for themselves.
I don't think when you burn olive oil it tastes that good anyway. I'd rather, if I were to eat olive oil, I'd eat it raw anyway. The idea of cooking with oil, it just concerns me, especially. It doesn't particularly taste good when you burn it. Oh, very, very interesting. Where would one buy oil that is very high quality? Like where's the place to buy oil in the highest quality form?
Well, they can come to my website, Gundry MD. We have an olive oil that has 30 times more polyphenols than any oil that's ever been tested. But having said that, you're not all going to come to GundryMD.com. But believe it or not, Costco has an excellent olive oil. It comes in a tall square bottle. It says Toscana on the label, and I use it as my everyday oil. That's a good source. There's another very good company out of California called Bariani. And again, I have no relationship with these companies. They just have a very high quality oil. And there's a company out of the Napa and Sonoma Valley called just the big O olive oil company. All small producers, all organic. So those are good choices.
Very cool. You had touched on mitochondria, and obviously you're coming out with your book, Energy Paradox. Can you
Yep.
give us a little bit of a preview into this book? How does your method help our mitochondrial health?
Well, it turns out we've done just the best job of destroying our mitochondrial function. You couldn't design a better lifestyle, a better diet than the standard American diet for destroying mitochondria. And In the book, I talk about how and I talk about this actually in the plant paradox as well. Mitochondria are the energy producing organelles in our cells. They're actually ancient engulfed bacteria. They carry their own DNA, but they are bacteria that live inside our cells. And we have if you think of them as workers on an assembly line, they have periods of time where they're going to do one shift, but currently in the United States, we're asking them to do 3 shifts with no time off. And they actually produce a labor slowdown because they don't want to work that hard. And that labor slowdown is the cause of prediabetes, of insulin resistance, of cancer. And we got to have them have some time off. And so that's why fasting, intermittent fasting, time restricted feeding actually gives our workers some much needed rest and recreation. And the more we do that, the more work they're able to do for us and do it better. So that's a little teaser.
I am such a big fan of fasting, and I love that you brought that up. Now, if mitochondria are, I shouldn't say if, since mitochondria are bacteria, when we take
Yep.
antibiotics, do antibiotics harm our mitochondria?
Indirectly, because it turns out, as I write about in the longevity paradox, that the bacteria in our gut actually talk to their sisters in the cells. And they actually tell the mitochondria how things are going in the outside world. And the more diverse those bacteria are, and the happier those bacteria are, then the better the mitochondria function. And we used to conjecture that there were text messages that we, hadn't been able to measure, but they had to be there. And it turns out we've discovered a large number of those text messages. They are real things that we can measure. And the book is about we ought to have a diverse group of bacteria in our gut. We ought to give them what they want to eat. And they need to tell the mitochondria, hey, everything's great.
Since researching and writing the energy paradox, what changes have you made to your lifestyle or diet?
Actually, not a whole lot, because the energy paradox is where the longevity paradox would naturally take me. And if you actually look at the people who enter my office, fascinatingly, fatigue is one of the biggest complaints.
Mm-hmm.
At least 50% of the people I see are fatigued for apparent no reason. And so the energy paradox kind of grew out of that. And believe it or not, there's really good reasons why most normal people are fatigued.
Since the last few months has been really crazy with
Yeah.
with the COVID-19, what have you done anything to change your lifestyle or diet to give an extra support to your immune function?
Well, as most people know, I'm a huge fan of vitamin D. I've never seen vitamin D toxicity, neither has my friend Dr. Mark Hyman. There are now 4 human papers showing that people with low vitamin D are much more susceptible to the COVID virus and are likely to do poorly with it, that is, die. Whereas if you have an adequate or high vitamin D level, you're much likely not to contract it and much likely not to die. So that's number one. And number two, Sugar dramatically suppresses our white cells' ability to engulf bacteria and viruses. And I just am releasing a podcast about that. So the less sugar or things that we turn into sugar, the better. What's really fascinating is a paper from 1973 showed that white blood cell function dramatically increased daily during a 5-day water fast. And that the longer you fast, the better your white blood cells worked and aggressively ate bacteria and viruses. Additionally, that same study showed that even orange juice, even fructose would dramatically suppress your white cells' ability to engulf bacteria for up to 6 hours after you had that beverage, even orange juice. So the idea that drinking orange juice right now is going to help you fight these viruses is actually exactly wrong.
You said that foods that convert to sugar, which would be plants, would be carbohydrates. Are you saying that we should maybe look at more of a low glycemic diet right now?
Right. So here's the problem with a lot of my well-meaning patients. You can take a resistant starch in its natural form, like, say, yucca or taro root or turnip, or even almonds, for instance. And you can grind it up into a fine powder and make a flour out of it. Unfortunately, and I've seen this much too much, those will rapidly turn into sugar, even though what you originally started with isn't sugar. For instance, I had Dr. David Kessler, who was the head of the FDA when the food labeling law came into effect back in the Reagan year. And the food labeling law was incorrectly made, because of food lobbyists to not tell the truth about how much sugar. So one of the things I have people do is on the back of the label, read total carbohydrates, subtract the fiber, and that will give you the amount of grams of sugar per serving in that product, and it will shock you. It will have nothing to do with what they put as the sugar content on the label. And then for fun, since there's 4 grams of sugar per teaspoon of sugar, divide the number you get by 4, and you will see the teaspoons of sugar per serving, and you will shudder when you see it.
Right. You can take a healthy food, if you dehydrate it, turn it into flour, it reacts totally different with the body. Like you could eat chickpeas, pressure cooked chickpeas, or you could eat something like a chickpea pasta. And chickpea pasta is going to convert much quicker to sugar, give you a larger sugar spike in the blood. Even for those who are not diabetic, they still will have that. Whereas if you ate pressure cooked chickpeas, it's a slow, steady release of sugar, covered in olive oil.
And throw some mushrooms in.
Oh man, mushrooms are so great for the immune system. What other? So get your vitamin D. Let's just clarify that. What form of vitamin D is best, and how many international units should someone be taking a day?
So vitamin D3, bare minimum should be 5,000 international IUs a day. For me, my 5,000 gets me vitamin D level above 120 nanograms per ml. But during the season, I've doubled my vitamin D to 10,000. And if I think I'm coming down with something, and I've said this before, I actually take 150,000 international units of vitamin D3 3 days in a row. Now, I'm not telling people to do that. I'm telling people that's what I do. And for instance, when this all started and I decided to keep seeing patients, um, even though I wasn't feeling anything, I took on a Sunday 10,000, 100,000 international units, on a Monday 5,000, on a Tuesday 25,000, and then I continued on 10,000. So I just load up with it. I just saw one of my patients in Santa Barbara last weekend. Her vitamin D level is 244, and I assure you she's not vitamin D toxic. She doesn't have an elevated calcium level. I think we've underestimated what a normal vitamin D level is. The Cleveland Clinic lab now says that a normal vitamin D level can be up to 150.
Amazing. Amazing. I know people whose vitamin D level is 10.
I know, it's really scary.
And MDs, I've known MDs to say they don't want to see it above 30. They're scared if you're above 30, they want you to stop taking your supplements. Whereas NDs want you at least to be 60. But many NDs I've met don't want you above 90. They're afraid that if you get above 90, that could cause toxicity. And you're saying that you've never seen toxic levels, because of course the worst case scenario is vitamin D toxicity could cause kidney failure, and like at that point it's almost too late. We definitely don't want to harm ourselves with supplements, but you've never seen that happen in prescribing large amounts of vitamin D.
Yeah, and I measure vitamin Ds on people every 3 months, and I've been doing this for over 20 years, and I've never seen vitamin D toxicity. And I have some patients who taught me in their late 70s, they run their vitamin Ds in the high 200s and have all of their lives. And, when I first met these people, I couldn't believe they weren't dead, or they didn't have, kidney failure, or they didn't have calcification and kidney stones, and they didn't. And when I was researching the longevity paradox, it turns out that people with the highest vitamin D levels have the longest telomeres. And so if you like the telomere theory of aging, and it's a good one, why wouldn't you want long telomeres?
Oh, that's exciting. So what form of vitamin D is best? I've seen, obviously you said D3, but I've seen supplements where it's like a dry capsule, and then I've seen the liquid form,
Great question.
those drops.
Turns out, that Dr. Michael Hollick from Boston University, probably the most famous researcher in vitamin D, showed that vitamin D is absorbed whether or not there is any fat around. So a dry vitamin D is perfectly fine. Most vitamin D is in capsules or gel caps. Interestingly, I see a number of people who use vitamin D drops. As a general rule, those people have much lower vitamin Ds than people who swallow the little gel caps.
Oh.
So most of my liquid folks, I change over and am delighted to see that their vitamin D goes up.
I was using a liquid and my vitamin D went down and down and down, and I kept using more and more and more. I got so frustrated, I switched to a capsule, and even though I heard from an HBAT, how could that work? There's no fat in it. And I was just like, well, I'm going to try this now. And my vitamin D went up. So I thought, well, I was told it's not going to work, but my labs say it worked.
No, Dr. Hollick showed that it has nothing to do with fat, even though it's a fat-soluble vitamin.
Should we take it on empty stomach with food, or does it not matter?
Doesn't matter.
Love it. Love it. What did you eat in the last 24 hours?
Let's see. What did I eat? Last 24 hours, I had nothing for breakfast. I had nothing for lunch. I had some sauteed calamari and some Chinese cabbage salad with olive oil and rice vinegar on it. That's what we had.
Very interesting. Now, your diet has helped people to reverse autoimmune conditions. you've also helped people to reverse cardiovascular issues and weight loss. Weight loss is one of those things. I mean, it's the biggest industry out there. You look at all the diets and people are just yo-yoing. You know, they'll every diet seems to work for a short amount of time
Sure.
before they feel like they blame themselves. The diet stops working, they blame themselves, they fall off the bandwagon, they go back to eating the standard American diet. But people are left feeling broken, right? Like they failed.
Yeah.
And what we're looking at is it's not their fault, it's the diet's fault, because there's so many wrong diets out there. You've had great success with helping people with weight loss. Why is it that removing lectins helps with weight loss?
Well, so as I write about in the plant paradox, there's actually some very interesting data looking at one of the lectins called wheat germ agglutinin, WGA, which is present in whole grains, whole wheat. And it binds to the insulin receptor on muscle cells and also on fat cells. And in muscle cells, it actually blocks insulin from letting sugars and protein into the muscle cell. But in fat cells, it actually continues to pump sugar into fat cells. And I go into more of this in the energy paradox, but we're set up with our diet to literally starve our muscle cells and feed our fat cells with lectins are a big hunk of that. Also, turns out that it starves the brain, and so your brain is constantly hungry, despite how much you eat or not eat.
Wow. And so when someone removes that, they're all of a sudden not feeling so starved. They're not feeling
Right.
like
Yep.
hungry all the time.
Yep. Yep.
Very cool.
And the other thing that we have to make sure we understand is that we took over the world because of our ability to go prolonged periods of time without eating. We're the fat ape for a good reason. And it is absolutely normal to go periods of time without eating. In fact, do you really think our ancestors crawled out of their cave and said, "What's for breakfast?" There wasn't any. There was no storage system. We had to go find breakfast. And if breakfast occurred at lunch or breakfast occurred at dinner, that's when we found food. So I actually tell my patients when we kind of get into this to embrace the hunger. And there is nothing horrible wrong with going a period of time without eating. In fact, just the opposite. It's really one of the smartest things that we can do for long-term health.
Actually, I haven't eaten today and I'm not going to eat today. I love fasting. Hunger is probably the hardest part about fasting, but hunger goes away. You know, it's one of
Goes
those,
quickly,
it,
very quickly.
it's kind of like going to the gym. Just get your shoes on and go to the gym. And the hardest part's actually getting your shoes on. And once you're there, it's easy. Starting a fast is the easiest part or the hardest part, and then following through is the easiest part. I love all the science that's coming out about fasting. What resources could you point us to for those who haven't really dived into fasting yet?
Well, I think there's a lot of good ways to learn about it. I certainly spend a lot of time talking about it in the longevity paradox, my one of my New York Times best-selling books. I think my friend Jason Fung has some good books about it. I think Dr. McCullough and I would agree that for most people who have been following the standard American diet, that a prolonged water fast of 3 to 5 days is probably the dumbest thing to do because heavy metals and organopesticides are stored in fat and they're released into our circulation, and we do not have a good detoxification system. And I've got a lot of podcasts out on that, so please be cautious.
Right. Always proceed with caution when fasting, especially if someone's on medication. And I agree. I liked some of Jason Fung's work as easy to digest. And I particularly like, he has a video on YouTube called the two compartment syndrome. And I think that's a great place to start. And intermittent fasting is something where it's gentle enough that people can ease into it. I actually did a whole a series with a man who has invested his own personal money into labs during doing fasting to show the heavy metals and pesticides being released in the body and how to best remove them while fasting. And he found that dramatically, if you were to use a sauna while fasting and also consume activated charcoal while fasting throughout the day, that they saw a dramatic decrease in heavy metals and pesticides being released from the fatty tissue into the bloodstream. So there are ways to combat it, but we have to be aware of it. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been such a pleasure having you on. I definitely would love to have you back to talk more about your next book when it comes out. It's been such a pleasure having you on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure, and I can't wait to read your new book when it comes out.
All right, it'll be out right after the first of the year, 2021.
All right. Sounds great. Terrific. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Take care. Thanks.
Take care.
Bye. I hope you enjoyed today's interview with Dr. Stephen Gundry. Hey, did you know that the Learn True Health podcast has a Facebook group? Come join us. It's a very supportive community. Just search Learn True Health in Facebook. Come join the Facebook group, or you can go to learntruehealth.com/group. That'll redirect you straight to our group. It's a free group, a very supportive community to support you in your holistic health success, support you in your true health journey. Come join the Facebook group, and please go to the website learntruehealth.com. You can find all my episodes there, all 431 of them now and counting. You can find free, wonderful resources. You can find my course. I have a month-long program where I teach you all the techniques, the NLP techniques for eliminating anxiety, decreasing stress, and increasing focus and productivity in your life. Go to learntruehealth.com, and in the menu, you'll see where it says Free Your Anxiety, and click on that. There's a great video there for you. So lots of resources to explore. I have a search function on my website. You can search topics that you are interested in learning about. You can also go to the Facebook group and search for topics there. There's a search function in Facebook as well. So there's so many resources that I provide through my membership, the Learn True Health Home Kitchen membership, through my Free Your Anxiety program, and free resources at learntruehealth.com. And if you have any questions for me, please feel free to reach out to me. Just ask questions in the Facebook group. And I love helping. I love supporting you guys in achieving optimal health. And if you're interested in becoming a health coach just like me, check out IIN, the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. That's the program I took, and I absolutely love it. And it's 100% online. So if you're quarantined at home right now, you could be becoming a health coach. Go to learntruehealth.com/coach. That's learntruehealth.com/coach. And there it'll give you access to a free module of IIN, the Institute for Integrative Nutrition's online program, so you could see if health coaching is right for you. So it's a free course. So go ahead and take it and see what you think about it. Experience it for yourself. learntruehealth.com/coach. Awesome. Thank you so much. You are so wonderful, and you so deserve true health. And I'm really glad that you took the time today to honor your body and honor your mission for achieving optimal health through learning more about what you can do naturally to support your body's ability to heal itself. Have yourself a wonderful rest of your day.